Hi there, this is Justina from Practices Academy. In this video, I'm going to talk about management case study, also called as CIMA Gateway. In particular, I'm going to touch upon what a management case study is all about. I will highlight some key points that I think you should focus on if you want to pass. I will explain the structure of the exam and we will also walk through an example. I will explain the role as a senior manager, so your role in this particular exam, and what it means, in particular what competencies do you need to show in order to pass, and how does it work. We'll explain exam marking, even though it sounds a little bit mysterious, but I'll do my best to explain everything that I know. And at the end, I'm going to give you some tips for passing. So let's move on. But before I do that, I'd like to explain you what is Practices Academy. Practices Academy is a provider of interactive online CIMA practice tests. We are online for around a year, and throughout that time, we've helped more than 3,000 CIMA students. Till now, our expertise has been with objective tests, and that was mostly due to my experience. Now let me explain. You see, I'm the type of person that I'm very focused on the quality, and I like to understand things inside out before I start to pass the knowledge to other people. Back in 2015, when I passed all my objective tests from the strategic level, I decided to create Practices Academy, and since then I've been so focused on developing the questions and dealing with the tutors that I postponed my very last exam. But the time has come. I set my strategic case study in February 2017 and I passed it. And that was mostly due to this great tutor that I found online who helped me out tremendously. And now I convinced him, he's working with us and he's responsible for all the case study within the Practices Academy. So together, we want to share the knowledge that we have with you and therefore help you pass your exam. We've developed a few packages that I'm pretty sure you'll find appealing due to the price and due to the content. And details will be provided at the end of this presentation. I think when you approach the case studies, the first question on your mind is, what actually is this case study? Case studies cover the knowledge material from three pillars, from the E2, P2 and F2. And case studies, in general, they assess everything that cannot be assessed via the objective tests. So they assessed what you can do and not what you know, which obviously is the point of the objective test. They assess your competencies plus the integration. We have 4 competencies, so we have technical knowledge, business skills, people skills, and leadership skills. And there is, because of the level that you are on, which is the management level, there is a dedicated percentage assigned to each of the competencies, which we will explain later on. Case studies tend to assess your communication skills. Obviously, you cannot test that via the objective tests. Communication is basically around how well you communicate with your peers, with your superiors, and with people that are working for you. During the case study, you will be presented with a complex and ambiguous situation, and your role will be to analyze it. And you need to remember always that whatever you say, whatever you decide, you always need to justify it. It doesn't matter if you are right or wrong, as long as you justify your recommendation. So, for example, it's not like previously that there is a specific key to a question and you need to answer exactly what is written in the answer. Here, if you write something that makes sense, you will still be given points. So don't worry about being right or wrong. Just remember that if you make a decision, you always need to justify why you have done it, what do you think are the implications of this decision, and things like that. I've done the research on the internet. I was looking for challenges that management case study students actually have, and those are the topics that came up the most. I could divide them in few chunks. The first chunk is how to prepare if there is no syllabus. That's a very fair question. On the other question would be, I got exempted from the previous papers. Now, how shall I prepare? How shall I cover the gap? And the third one, I passed my exams according to 2010 syllabus. I had few years of break. How shall I start? In the management case study, the technical knowledge accounts for at least 39%. The rest, I would say, is more based on your experience and the common knowledge. My suggestion would be to review the notes that you had from before papers. And if you don't have any, then I would suggest to get the book, even though it's a lot of reading, or go through the summary notes from other online providers. I actually think this is the most efficient way. Now, the other topics that comes up also very often is, what are those competencies about anyway? And what about the integration marks? The purpose is to test you upon the skills that couldn't be tested while you were doing the objective tests. And the competencies really help with that. Competencies are adjusted to a specific level, in your case a management level, and I will explain all the split of the competencies and the integration marks in a second. The topic that comes up also quite often is about the time management during the exam and about your typing ability. We will also mention that at the end of this presentation. The last point that comes up very often is how to interpret the requirements and how to plan a good and solid answer. And we have also prepared a specific slide about it, so all those concerns will be addressed in this presentation. Now let me explain you the structure of the management case study. Pre-seen material is released 7 weeks before the exam. You can download it from CIMA Connect or directly from our website. Just like objective tests, so the exams from before, if you are familiar with them, case studies are also conducted on the computer. Each exam takes 3 hours, and you have an additional 15 minutes to familiarize yourself with the tool. Case studies are conducted 4 times a year over a period of 5 days. And there are also 5 different variants of this exam. The variant that you are going to get is picked randomly from the system. So for example, if you are going to sit an exam at the same time as your friend in the same room, there's a big possibility that you are going to have a different variant, which basically means you are going to have a different set of questions. Exams are marked manually by CIMA, so therefore you cannot get result straight away. You need to wait around 4 or 5 weeks, and the results will be given to you under My CIMA. Total number of the points that you can get is 150. Your result will be scaled. So long story short, if for example there is a section that takes 20% of your time, you are going to get 20% of the marks for that particular section, and that will be the maximum. Now overall there are 2 criteria that you need in order to pass. You need to have at least 80 points, which is around roughly 53%, and the second criteria is that you need to demonstrate a minimum threshold score for each of the competencies. And there are 4 competencies that I'm going to describe in a second. So we have technical knowledge, we have business skills, people skills, and leadership skills. And the split of those skills is adjusted to your level, so to the management level. The last thing that I would like to touch upon is that in management case study, there are around 3 to 4 sections that you are going to receive, and each section will have a specific time allocated. And I also have a slide on that one. Okay, so let's move on. Now let's do the walkthrough of the system. So just to recap, there will be around 3 to 4 sections. Each section will be time limited, and it doesn't mean that they will be even. So for example, one section can last for 1 hour, the other can be only half an hour, and you are going to get points accordingly to the time that is dedicated for each section. Now each section can have between 2 to 5 tasks. Let me walk you through an example of management case study from November 2016. We have downloaded a lot of information directly from CIMA Connect, so everything is there for your convenience if you decide to work with us. Let me start very quickly with the pre-seen material. The pre-seen material consists of around 20-30 pages. The pre-seen material is released 7 weeks before, and that's enough time for you to familiarize yourself with the company. So what you need to do, you just need to put yourself in the shoes of your specific character, and your role will be a finance manager, and I'll explain that in a second, what exactly that means. However, what you need to consider is that you are a senior manager, you are not a CIMA student, and therefore you should act like a finance manager, and your role will be to make decisions for the benefit of the company. So this material is just to familiarize yourself with the company and with the surrounding of the company. So as you can see here, when we scroll down, this is the description of your role as a finance manager. Here you have a brief summary of what the company Portaphone is actually doing. There you will have a description of the market. So kind of like industry analysis, not very thorough one, but let's say enough to understand the business. Here's the description of the market, meaning the customers, like what do they do. You will also have a description of a very specific relevant points or issues related with the business. You're going to receive some charts that shows you, in this case, sales, but it doesn't mean that it can be only sales. It could be like the share price, how it developed across few years. You're going to definitely get this kind of information. And some more detailed information. In this case, it's about the cost of the manufacturing and extracts from the financial statements. Financial statements come always. Usually they are comparing 2 years. Sometimes it happens that there are more. If there are more, then it's kind of like a point for you to figure out like, well, what are they trying to say? What's the hint? Usually there is something. If there is more, then there is something. You are also going to have a statement of financial position and some other information. In most cases, what they are going to explain as well is they are going to give you some financial statements of your closest or biggest competitor from the market, and therefore your job would be to compare the numbers from your competitor to your own company and figure out what are the differences, how do they run the business as compared to how do we run the business, where do they spend the most on, what's the advertising over there like. What are the biggest manufacturing costs? I mean, if you can find out answers to those questions, I think you will do really great on the exam. You will also have a description who belongs to the senior management, and that will depend whether the company is listed or not. You may have some corporate governance issues as well, or ethics. Just remember to just keep that in mind, because those topics, they come up very often, and doesn't matter on which kind of level you are, ethics is really important. Now afterwards there will be a section regarding the references. So those are the press releases that are going to talk about either your company or your competitors or in general the market. And that's the end. So now we've seen the pre-scene. Let's do some testing. There are 2 ways that you can do the testing. One way is just to have a look at the document that CIMA releases, and those are the past questions that CIMA puts on their CIMA Connect site. We have downloaded that for your convenience, so you can have a look exactly how it looks like. Here you see that in management case study you have 4 sections, and each section has the same amount of time assigned. That means that each section will be marked evenly, which basically gives you 25% of marks for each section. The second way to do some testing is via our testing tool. First, you're going to have an introduction screen. This is the real exam. Now, what I would like to put your attention on is you have the time remaining for each section. It's exactly the same on the real exam. And you are also going to have pre-scene materials available for you in case you forget. So just don't panic if you forget a specific fact that you are being asked for. You can always come back to it. However, let me just stress out the importance of doing the preview of the pre-scene material. You just need to read it through really thoroughly, at least 3 times, because you just need to know it inside out. Personally, I believe it's a total waste of time if you are trying to read your pre-scene materials during your exam. I mean, the exams are designed in such a way you are being asked for something specific. You have 45 minutes to answer, and there's really no time to waste on reading something that you should have done before, okay? So please do me a favor and just get familiar with the pre-scene material. Okay, so in this case, you are going to get an email directly from your senior financial manager. And here you see it's not really that straightforward as what this person is actually asking you. Because if you read through it, it's no such thing as bullet points or like firstly, secondly. Sometimes that happens that the request is being addressed via words. Firstly, please do this. Secondly, please do that. Here in this case, the senior manager is just asking, please draft the memo for my approval. And you just need to figure out what actually he means. And all the other details you're going to have here. Now, as this is an email, he is mentioning that he has attached something to this email. And the attachment also is available via clicking the button. Now, when you press the continue, you can always come back. That's not a problem. So here it says draft a memo in the box below. Here you just need to remember that you need to structure your answer in such a way that it's clear, precise, and a good skeleton, in my opinion, is the first step to success in case study. Now, examiners are actually really stressing that out, that your answer should be really clear. So therefore, I would really advise you to use the bold and the italics and underline and also big letters. Okay, there are two ways to finish your exam. 5 minutes before the exam, so 5 minutes till the end, you're going to have a pop-up window saying you have 5 minutes left. And for me personally, it's always an indication that I should just stop writing and read through my answer, because maybe something just doesn't make sense. Maybe there are some quick fixes that I can do in order to improve my score. And now there are two ways to finish an exam. You can either click on the end button, or when the time is up, the screen is going to close up automatically. So even if you were in the middle of typing and the time is up, you cannot write anymore and you'll be redirected to a different screen. So just keep that in mind. When the time is up, it's really up. You can end the exam earlier by clicking the finish or end button. However, I would not really advise that. Personally, I would use the maximum of the time that is given to me in order to prepare the best answer possible. Now, in our system, what happens is that you are going to have an email with the answer that you have written. So everything is there if you want to compare. Now, you can compare it against the answers that were provided by CIMA. You can have a look at them here. This is an example answer provided by CIMA, just to illustrate what is required. So as you can see, the section 1 has something like 1 page, and that's it. So you can see that it doesn't really mean that you need to write really a lot. You just need to be wise in what you're writing, and remember, quality over quantity. I really cannot stress that enough. The next thing I would like to mention is the CGMA competency framework. Now, let me just get back for a second. Case studies were designed in such a way that they teach you how to apply your knowledge into a specific scenario or business case. And that was done in order to make you more employable. Based on my own experience, I can say that the skills that you are going to learn during this case study will not only help you to pass the exam, but will also help you at your work. Because most of the time you are going to receive requests like emails from your boss, or maybe a CFO will write to you and ask you about something, and then you just need to know how to pass the knowledge in such a way that the recipient of this message actually understands the point that you are making and how you should communicate so everything is clear. In the management level, the skill set is adjusted exactly according to the role that you are going to have in the company. So 39% of your total score will be assigned to the technical skills, which I'll explain in a second, but long story short, technical skills is actually the knowledge that you gathered from your previous papers. Now, business skills account for 24%, people skills with all the influence and negotiation and communication accounts for 21%, and then leadership skills for 16%. Now, what is also worth mentioning here is if you look at how leadership skills are developing across different levels, so you see the higher you get in the hierarchy, the more important the leadership skills are, while at the same time you are losing the technical skills, which is exactly the case what happens when you are in a senior management role. You don't need to know exactly how to book things, but at least you need to have an idea about it. Okay, now knowing the competencies, let's move on to your role as a finance manager. At the management level, you are responsible for monitoring the implementation of the strategy. Your focus is on the medium term. Basically what that means is that you need to translate the long-term strategy that was decided on the board level into a more tangible short-term goals that can be implemented at the operational level. So just to illustrate, you're going to make decisions about investments in specific products, about the prices, and the understanding of the costing that was done at the operational level will really help you with that. You will need to analyze and manage the drivers of the costs, and when you make those decisions, you need to have in mind everyone that could be affected by your decisions. So your environment, your stakeholders, all the possible stakeholders. And as for the performance pillar, you need to have a more detailed consideration of the risk for the long-term decisions. Okay, so just to recap, you have to monitor the implementation of the strategy. You'll need to translate the strategy from the higher level to the operational level. Your focus will be on the medium term. You will need to know how to prepare the budget, but no heavy calculations will be required. Usually you're going to be provided with calculations and you need to just analyze them, assess them. You'll make decisions for the wealth of the company for the future, and you need to understand your surrounding and all the stakeholders. So the skills that are going to be needed is the detailed knowledge of risk for long-term decisions, and even though your focus is on the medium term, risk is a very specific topic and you need to show that you understand the repercussions of your actions in the future. More advanced financial reporting will be required in order to paint a picture of past performance that may involve group accounts for a number of entities. You will need to produce some management information, cost reports, and interpret everything that you are given in order to influence the CFOs and the senior business managers. Now let me just quickly walk through all the skills that are needed. So technical skills account for 39%. They cover all the 3 papers, as you can imagine. It's also assumed that you have the knowledge from the previous papers. So for example, in the performance pillar, if you know from P1 the product costing techniques, it's going to be very useful for you to figure out what the price of a product could be based on the information that you have from the previous papers. And some concrete examples of things that you could be asked for is you could be asked to prepare plans for financial reporting, which includes group accounting. You could also be asked from the performance level to analyze and manage costs using information produced at the operational level. So in this case, you can get some kind of reports from your analyst and you need to make decisions based on that. Also, you could get some questions regarding the compliance with tax or other regulations. The next skill is a business skill, which accounts for 24%. And this is a very interesting skill, in my opinion, because here you just need to appreciate the business context, the macro environment. Now, if you read through the pre-scene, and if you really understand the concepts that are mentioned over there, the structure of the company, the organization of the company, the environment of the company, and actually what your role is and what you could do for that company, you can be sure you will tick the box for business skills. Business skills is kind of like an integration of the knowledge that you got before with the pre-seen material and also with the unseen material that you are going to get during your exam. So now a few concrete examples, mostly taken from the E2 level. So as you could see in the previous technical skills, I didn't really mention a lot of E2 because, to be honest, my opinion is that E2 is mostly tested via the business skills. So here you could define some short-term goals. You could be asked to interpret the environment of the company, to identify what are the stakeholders, what are the impacts, what's their power, what's their interest. And also you could be asked something about the risk. Now, people skills account for 21%. It's all about the communication, which includes influencing people that work with you, that you work for. You also need to demonstrate some negotiation skills. You need to make solid decisions based on the analysis that you have done before. And remember, you will not be judged upon whether you have made the right or the wrong decision. You just need to justify why you have made the decision, and you will be given points anyway. An example of the people skills that you could be asked for is again taken from the E2, and it's about communication of the plans to your colleagues. The last skill that you are going to be tested upon is a leadership skill, and it accounts for 16%. As a leader, you need to manage the change, you need to drive performance improvements. So those are the topics that come up from the E2 paper. As a finance manager, you have a dedicated level of responsibility. You have people that probably work for you and you need to guide them, you need to be their leader. Now, if after all this review you are still really unsure and you need to have some more concrete input, I would suggest you to refer to the page 92 from the Professional Syllabus Qualification PDF. You can just Google that. And on the page 92, you're going to have this screen, which shows exactly what everything means. So for example, if you are really unsure about the leadership skills, you can figure out what it means and which paper it covers. So for example, you have team building, you have coaching and mentoring, and leadership skills, as you can see, comes up in the E2 paper mostly and in the E3 paper. So obviously you're not going to be tested upon E3 here. However, you know that leadership skills comes up mostly from the E2 paper, and as for the performance, it's covered in the P2 paper. For me, the way it looks is that all the technical skills are mostly taken from the F and the P pillars, and all the business acumen, people skills, and leadership skills come up mostly from the E2 level. So here's a tip for you. Be sure that you know the E2 paper really inside out. Now let's move on to the marks allocation. When I was walking you through the system, I showed you already how the exam is structured, so that we have 4 sections and each section has dedicated time assigned. In our particular case, it was 45 minutes for all the sections, so they were evenly split. In this particular example, you can see that you have a little bit different split. So for example, the section 1 accounts for 55 minutes, and that will be 55 divided by 3 hours, and that percentage of the total point is going to be allocated to section 1. So just you need to keep that in mind, and then the moment when you start your exam and you see this little table, you just need to check very quickly the time for each section. So my suggestion would be, when you start an exam, have a look at the table and just note down somewhere the time that you have allocated per each section. So at least you have some kind of idea how many marks you can get and what you should focus on. Because during the exam, it will only be displayed what's the remaining time that you have left. And now you may wonder, but why is it so important to know exactly what's the total amount of time? This is really important because if you allocate 1/3 of the total time just to plan the answer, you can be sure that the answer will be very solid, very thorough, well organized, and you're going to get some extra points because of that. And remember, case studies are all about the quality and not the quantity. So it doesn't really matter how much you write over there. It doesn't matter if you write 5 pages. If they are not going to be addressing what the question was about, you are not going to have any kind of marks. So this is just a quick reminder that you are going to have maximum of 150 points. You need 80 to go through, and you need to have at least a moderate knowledge from all the competencies that are mentioned below. Now, we've described already the competencies. The one that was left was the integration. Personally, for me, integration is like bonus points. You need to show that you can integrate the knowledge and the material that you have learned before and that you have also read through pre-seen material in your answer. That's basically what integration is all about. So if you answer the question requirement in a fluent and a business appropriate way, you're going to have some integration points. And if you are just like me and you want to really get to the bottom of everything, this is how the human marking really looks like. It's a screenshot that was taken from the CIMA presentation. So in the main window, you can see the answer that a particular student provided. So this human marking actually takes place on a computer in a specific system. The marker is going to get answer in this kind of format, and afterwards they are going to judge you upon different skills. So for example, on the right side, you have this field, and over there you see how many points a particular marker assigned to a specific, let's say, topic from the given list. And each of those points, they are actually assigned to a specific competency, and that's how you get, let's say, the scores for each competency, and then you know whether you are moderate, you have a strong skill, or if you actually failed on a particular skill. Now, personally for me, there's not really a lot of sense to understand what actually this moderate, strong, or fail means. As long as you are above fail, it's fine. If you failed already a particular exam before, just have a look at the particular competency that you have failed and just have a look where it's covered and just try to maybe read more material on that and try to integrate it into the pre-scene. The next point is how a good answer actually looks like. I have touched upon that already before. I think it's really the most important to plan your answer in a correct way. CIMA suggests that you consider spending 1/3 of your time for planning the answer. Personally, I would add here that in that 1/3 of the time, you actually create a structure, like a skeleton of the answer. For example, how I was always doing. I was always trying to identify what were the requests that were being asked, and then I was kind of retyping them in the answer sheet. And always the first request I was writing in a capital bold letters. Now the second one, if there were some specific points that were being asked that I had to address, I was putting them in bold, and then I was always also using the tabulation in order to make the answer, let's say, eye-friendly. Now just consider the fact that the markers are actually humans, and put yourself in their shoes. If you would receive a paper from a student that is like a long line of text, I think that you would lose the attention very quickly. And that's actually what can happen with the examiners, because again, they are just human. That's the first thing. And the second thing, you also need to consider why this is done. If you are writing to, for example, a CFO, and if you write in such a way that it's not really understandable, I can tell you from my experience, they lose interest after first two lines. Even sometimes they just read the first line, and if it's not really clear, they just throw away the email. So here I do believe that if you can excel at communication skills, you are going to do just fine in this case study. So other key points that I could mention here, other key tips. Well, spend some time on reading exactly the requirements. Don't rush into writing the answer straight away. Just think about what actually is being asked. Because sometimes if you spend like maybe an extra minute just trying to figure it out, some very good suggestions can come. So of course you need to answer the full question, all the requirements. You need to address everything that the person was asking in the section. Your answer has to be logical. Another point that I could mention here is that you should demonstrate the theory and that you apply the theory to a particular business case. Now what actually it means? Long story short, you should refer as many times as possible to the pre-scene scenario. So for example, if in the pre-scene was written that, I don't know, a CEO mentioned this and that, mention that in your answer. I'm pretty sure that you are going to be given extra points, and those extra points will probably be assigned to the business skills. But it's always good to know. I mean, it kind of gives a feeling that you really understand thoroughly the market and the business case. And that's what the case study is about. And the last point to mention here is about your formatting, which I have already touched upon. Remember, short sentences, use headings, use subheadings, use short and to-the-point paragraphs, and occasionally bold few things or underline it. Now let me show you some tips from CIMA on passing the management case study. When I say from CIMA, it's actually taken directly from their webinar on how to pass a management case study. They suggest that you fully absorb the pre-scene materials, that you should read it at least 3 times, you should do your analysis on the numbers, on the SWOT. that you should understand the requirements that are being asked and that you structure your answers accordingly to the requirements. My particular advice would be not to worry too much about the competencies while you are answering. Okay, they exist, you are being marked, assessed upon them, but just don't spend too much time thinking about it. Just try to give the most thorough answer that you can possibly think of. Not only think about the hard skills, think maybe to include a little bit more of the softer skills. Think about E2 paper. Now, the biggest takeaway is, remember, it's all about the quality. It's not about the quantity. You saw the suggested answer that CIMA has provided for one of the past case studies. When a question is like 45 minutes long, you just physically you cannot type much more than 1 page. 1 page is really enough. And if you add over there all the additional spaces, headings, subheadings and things like that, it's actually maybe even 75% of the page is enough for you to pass the particular section. Now, you should relate your answer as often as possible to the pre-seen material in order to show the integration and the business skills. As for the time management, it's always good to think before you actually sit an exam how you're going to approach it. And my suggestion, and also CIMA's suggestion, would be to spend 1/3 of the time on planning the answers and then the rest on writing a response. Students have this issue of typing speed. CIMA suggests that you should be able to write at least 20 words per minute. Personally, I think faster is better. However, again, this is about the quality, not the quantity. So if you are a slow typer, but your answer is really thorough, you're going to be just fine. And additionally, I think that nowadays in the business environment, the faster you type, it's going to just help you out at your work. So if you feel that you could improve on that skill, just go on the internet, Google some free typing classes or typing resources and just use it. It's just going to help you anyway. If not for the case study, definitely in your life. My personal last tip would be not to do it alone. Just use the tuition providers. You can sign up for any classes, physical classes, or you can sign up for any online providers. Not necessarily with Practice Test Academy. However, we do have a package that could help you out with your studies. Currently, we provide 2 options. One package covers everything that you need to know in order to pass. So the full materials with all the videos, pre-seen analysis, industry analysis, 3 mocks with answers that you can test via the tool that I've showed you. You also be given a possibility to test on the past papers. However, if the full package is a little bit too much for you, you can only focus on the mock exams, and that's perfectly fine. We have a separate package designed for that. And the last thing that we offer is actually a one-on-one tuition online. You could sign up for the full course, let's say with 20 or even 40 hours. However, my recommendation is, and that's actually how I managed to pass my strategic case study, I took a few lessons, I think actually 5, just to check where actually I am, where my knowledge was, and how well was I prepared for the exam. Now, we are working with a very good online teacher, and thanks to him, I personally passed my exams. The private lessons that I took with him were really helpful because I was a little bit lost. I was not really sure in which direction to go, but he gave me some really useful tips on how to structure my answer, how to write. And sometimes I believe that you need this personal touch to amend just little things, because I do believe that you have the knowledge. You just need to find a way how to express this knowledge in such a way that you're going to pass an exam and also improve your life in the future. Thank you very much for watching. If you found this video interesting, please like the video, and in the comment section, please share your thoughts with us. And also, if you would like to know what are the ways how you can work with us so we can help you pass your exam, please just go to practicetestacademy.com/ MCS, like Management Case Study, in order to learn a little bit more about our offer. Thank you very much and have a lovely day. Bye!